Again, statistics students, hopefully you made it through that long video. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Hopefully you took breaks during that video or something. That last one was way too long. This one, I hope, will be shorter. There's just so much vocabulary that happens in chapter 4 that we need to take a look at. And so that's what we're gonna do today. And I want to get right to it so that I don't end up overshooting the its time frame again by so much. Today we're talking about the language of experiments. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define some terms, and then we're going to look at a little bit more closely at the types of experiments we can do, different designs and what needs to be there. And then at the end, we'll talk about some of the things that can go wrong. So the language of experiments. All right. So the first thing I want to define for you is that there are, or to let you know, there are two main types of studies that we can do. There's something called an observational study. And in an observational study, it pretty much exactly as it sounds. The idea is to just simply observe. And then there's something that's called an experiment. Okay. And so a lot of times if we were in class, what I would do, I would ask you, like, do you have any like gut feeling, like what's the difference? And today, since we're not in class, I'm just going to go ahead and define these things. In an experiment, we impose a treatment. A treatment of some kind. And in an observational study, we simply observe. Some people will say something like we manipulate a variable. Okay. And then in observational studies, we don't do any variable manipulation. We just simply try to see the subjects, the experimental units as they are. And so that's the first thing. We're going to talk a lot about the difference between these two, observational study versus experiments. Hopefully, when you start to get comfortable with this language, it will become a little more natural for you too, as to which one's which. This section is titled Language of Experiments. So we're mostly going to focus in on experiments. And then talk about when we start looking at experiments, what are we talking about? But in both cases, there are some things that are in common, and so that will be what we want to first identify. In this one, I talked about variables, and so we want to make sure that we understand that there are many variables that may be things that we could either observe or manipulate. So in both of these studies, experiments or observational studies, it's about variables. And so if you had a chance to complete the Mr. A Super Awesome Mega Stats Survey, you saw that there were many variables about you that I was gathering information about. And so in the case of the survey that I had you take, that's an observational study. I didn't impose any treatments on you. I simply had you answer some questions in the survey. Okay, and so that's what we call observational study, but it's still about those variables. The actual specific things that I am recording are the variables. And then in the case of an experiment, we would then maybe try to change or somehow manipulate one of the variables that is part of that study. And so that's the difference, is that in an observational study, we don't do anything to them. The experiment, we do. All right, there are two main types of variables in our study. There's something called the explanatory variable. All right. Oops, wrong thing here. The explanatory variable. Explanatory. And there's something called the response variable. Okay, so I think the names sort of tell you exactly what they are. The explanatory variable is the one that explains the change in the response variable. And so the scenario I like to use a lot of the time is, so you guys know that off of North Street, we have our little drop-off circle where parents will sometimes come and drop. There's a new parking lot in there. If you haven't been by, there's a place to park in there now. And my classroom, 206, where I used to teach, looks out on that. And even though at the end of that circle, there's a sign that says no left turn, sometimes there are drivers that will still make a left turn illegally out of our circle. Lots of them. And if I sat there one morning and looked at the number of people making an illegal left-hand turn, okay, and I didn't change any of the variables in the study. I just let them come through in the morning and do that. I'm doing an observational study, and I'm really just recording the number of people making illegal left-hand turns. And so I'm just recording that single variable. Okay, but then if I change a condition or a variable, you see, if I have our SRO, Officer Wilson, take his police car and park it across down Pfeiffer, and so that he's looking at the driveway there, do you think that will change the behavior of the people and their illegal left-hand turns? Okay. So the explanatory variable in that case would be the presence of the police car, and the response variable then would be the number of people making illegal left-hand turns. So that's a short example of what I mean by explanatory variable, the one that we're trying to use to explain the change in the response variable. So that's kind of a fun example. I'll use that one from time to time. I'm in a new classroom now, so I don't actually look that direction anymore, but it's still, I think you all are familiar with how that works. Okay. There's actually a third kind of variable though. The explanatory variable, the response variable, there's another variable, and I always wish this was Halloween time or we were closer, because it sounds very Halloweenish. The lurking variable. So a lurking variable is a non-explanatory variable that may be having some influence on the response variable. Okay, and so what I wanted to describe for you really quickly is a study that was done. This was done probably about 25 years ago. And they looked at women who were reaching menopause. And in this study, there were two kinds of women that they were studying. They looked at women who were, when they went through menopause, they had something called hormone replacement therapy. So we had a hormone replacement therapy variable, HRT. And the answer was, it was a very simple variable. It was a binary one. It was just yes or no. Okay. And then they looked at the rate at which the women in the study died from breast cancer. Okay. And so explanatory variable, okay, whether or not they were taking hormone replacement therapy, this is our explanatory variable. And this was our response variable. Okay. And what they found in this study was a significant reduction in breast cancer deaths for the women who were undergoing hormone replacement therapy. So significantly fewer deaths. In the women who were on hormone replacement therapy. And this study, this was massive. There were thousands and thousands of women in this study. And so it was very interesting to see that hormone replacement therapy, it has the benefit of helping, for those of you who are unfamiliar, menopause can create some pretty severe side effects for some women. Hot flashes, and there's mood changes. There's lots of things that can go on during menopause. And so by replacing the hormones that their bodies aren't normally producing anymore, the thought was that they could help sort of mitigate some of those more uncomfortable side effects or things that were going on with their bodies as they were going through menopause. And then there was this huge benefit. Turned out that by doing hormone replacement therapy, then they were also much less likely, significantly less likely to die from breast cancer. So it seemed like this really great study, and they put it out there. The problem that they ran into is this was actually observational study. We didn't assign women into groups that got hormone replacement therapy or not getting hormone replacement therapy. They were already going to get hormone replacement therapy or not get hormone replacement therapy. And therein lies the problem. There's a lurking variable in this problem. Okay. And you may have already thought of it, you maybe haven't thought of it yet. The lurking variable that was hiding in here is, where do you get hormones for hormone replacement therapy? Right? Well, if you said you get them from the doctor's office, you're correct. So the women who were getting hormone replacement therapy, guess what? They were also regularly seeing their doctor. Okay. The women who were over here that were not getting hormone replacement therapy, are they under the regular care of a physician? Maybe, but maybe they're not. But the women who were getting hormone replacement therapy were definitely under the care of their doctor. So all of a sudden, the lurking variable of doctor has created a problem where now, do we know, was the reduction in breast cancer deaths due to hormone replacement therapy? Or was it due to the fact they were under the regular care of their doctor? We are now, what we say in statistics, confounded. Ooh, that's not, something happened to my pen right there, it didn't work. This is an example of what we call confounding. Confounded means I don't know whether the result in the response variable, that significantly fewer deaths from breast cancer, is due to hormone replacement therapy or due to the fact they were under the care of their doctor. Well, what do we know about breast cancer, specifically, and all cancers generally, is that early detection is key. If you detect the cancer early, your odds of survival, long-term survival, go up dramatically. And that's exactly what was happening. Now, this study, this was not like some study that never really made it out. This was in the American Journal of Medicine. This was a big study. It was advertised. It was a big deal that hormone replacement therapy was this, great thing for women to go through if they were going through menopause, because it also had this huge added benefit. Well, turns out that study was the result of some confounding. There was no way to actually assign women to the treatment groups of getting hormone replacement therapy and not. There's some ethical concerns there. We'll talk more about ethics next week. And so that was a great example of a lurking variable, the non-explanatory variable, because the explanatory variable was supposed to be hormone replacement therapy, but we had now all of a sudden this lurker came in, and because we don't understand the interplay of the variables, so we don't know which one is actually resulting or causing the resulting effect in the response variable, we are what we call confounded. So there's a whole bunch of terms right there that are part of the language of experiments. Yeah, we see pretty clearly that we can run into some problems in a poorly designed study. And not that this was poorly designed, it wasn't really an experiment. All right, another name for the explanatory variable could be treatment. We give a treatment, okay, and that's where we apply some special condition to the individuals in our group. So we sometimes might call that the treatment variable. So that's another part of our language of experiments here. All right. When we experiment, okay, when we do an experiment, okay, so now we're going to talk specifically experiment for a minute. This is experiments now. Okay. There are 3 principles of experiment design. Okay, and this is how you do a good experiment design. We control for lurking variables. Okay, now how do we do that? Well, the best way to do that is to have what's called a comparative design. meaning you've probably heard of control groups and experimental groups. Yeah, we have some kind of a comparative design. Not every good experiment has a control group that receives 0 treatments. Okay, that's not necessarily the case. Okay, but we have to use some kind of a comparative design. Okay, that is key for a quality experiment. The other thing, another thing, there's 3 of them. We have to do random assignment to the groups. If we don't do random assignment, okay, like simple random sampling when we were doing sampling procedures, okay, we could create a bias in our study. Okay, and so we want to have random assignment to those comparative groups. Okay, so if I have 3 different treatments I'm trying out, I've got group 1, group 2, group 3, I need to randomly assign my participants to those groups. Okay, without random assignment, we can't guarantee that there's not some variable that's overly represented in one of those 3 groups. Okay, and the third principle of experiment design is replication. And what replication is, it means using enough, I should put that in quotes, because how much is enough, right? Using enough experimental units to distinguish the effects of the treatment, from random chance. Okay, so yeah, it's basically saying, yeah, if I were to do an experiment and I only use, say, 5 students, there could be random chance in my study that for some reason those 5 students were unique in some way, and whereas if I use 50 students, there's a much lower probability of the same characteristic being present in all 50 of those students. So those are the 3 key elements, or the 3 principles of experiment design. And so when we talk about a quality experiment, we're going to be looking for those 3 things: comparative design, random assignment, and replication. When we do our studies later in the year, we'll have a better definition of what we mean by enough experimental units to distinguish between the effects of treatment and random chance. But whichever design you're doing, those are the 3 things that need to be there. There are 3, there's a couple of different experiment designs that we're going to see. And so I want to look at the 3 different experiment designs and kind of show you how they have all of these different principles in them. So the first one I'm going to draw out here for you is something called the completely randomized experiment. Okay, and in a completely randomized experiment, what happens is you have all of your, this is all of your people that have decided that they would be in your study. So this is all your, these are all your subjects. Okay, and let's say we have, I don't know, let's just do it simple. So we just have 2 groups. We have a control group. Oops, sorry, wrong thing. We have a control group over here, and then we have our treatment group over here. Okay, and this is control, and this is treatment. Okay. And the way they get assigned to these is at random. Okay, so you just randomly sort. Oop, I need a different color for that arrow. And that whole thing just is completely random. Okay, so you're randomly sorting into those 2 groups. Okay. So we randomly pick half of them that go to the control group and randomly pick half of them go to the treatment group. Now notice, okay, it's comparative design because I have my control group and my treatment group. Okay, I've used random assignment, and then we'll just have to say, let's say, we had 100 subjects or 1,000 subjects, or, AstraZeneca is doing COVID-19 trial with 50,000 participants. So they're really doing a lot of replication. So that's a completely randomized design. It's very simple. Okay, put them all together, put them into groups. Okay. Sometimes though, that might not be the best design. Okay, when we were talking about sampling procedures, we said, sometimes there's characteristics inside your group already before you get them that maybe are important. Okay, and if that's the case, maybe we need to recognize that ahead of time. So in this case, suppose I have my subjects here. Okay, these are my test subjects, whatever experimental units we have. Okay, but I look at my subjects and I go, wow. Let's just use gender as a variable, because if the word is subjects, then it usually means that they're humans. And a real quick word about gender. I don't want to be insensitive in this class. Okay, I want to recognize that there are possibly there's a wide range of gender choices. Okay, but for us, for the sake of statistics and all throughout our textbook, gender is treated as a binary variable. Okay, so I want to recognize that I'm trying not to be like so old school in my thinking about it, but for the sake of our experiments and the textbook and the way they've defined the gender variable in our book, it's defined to be binary. Okay, so please know that that's not necessarily my personal view, but it is the view of the book and how it's treated in the statistics course. So we're going to go with binary. I'm trying not to be offend anyone with that, but that's how they've defined it. So, but maybe I recognize that gender is an important variable, and so before I do any randomization, okay, maybe it's important to look at the impact that this study has on males and females. Okay, this is not random. Okay, we are going to take all the males and put them over there in this group, and all the females and put them over into this group. Okay, and I really want to emphasize this is not random assignment. Okay, this first part here. Okay, these are done intentionally because we think, hey, maybe this study is going to impact males versus differently than it's going to impact females. Then, once we have them into the gender groups, we can say, okay, now I'm going to randomly sort the males, and we'll do a simple one again that just has one treatment and a control, and we'll sort the females into a treatment and a control. And that is, let's go treatment. I'm going to abbreviate it there. Control, treatment, and control. And this is random. Okay, this is where the randomization is happening. Boom, 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 boom. Over here, yes, this is random. Okay, in here, let's move that down here. Yeah, this is where the random assignment occurs. Okay, now, thinking back to my principles of design, is it a comparative study? Yes, it is, because I have treatment and control. I have treatment and control in the males. Okay, over here, I've got treatment and control right here. And I've got treatment and control here. So I'm comparing. Okay, so I've got a comparative study. Have I used random assignment? Yes, I have. I've done random assignment to get them in the treatment and control groups. I didn't do random assignment to get them in the genders. They came to the study. The subjects came as pre-assigned gender. Okay, they were males and females. Okay, once we had them separated out, we split them up. Guys, this is called a randomized. Oops, I didn't mean to capitalize that. Randomized block design. Okay. Blocking is when we look at our study and we say, hey, there's important differences of the people in this study. Let's draw that out and see what effect that has. It's a lurking variable. Gender could have been a lurking variable. I saw one done with dogs, and so instead of genders, okay, they had large breed dogs and they had small breed dogs. Okay, and because they were studying glucosamine on joint health in dogs. Well, does the fact that it's a large breed dog versus a small breed dog maybe affect that? Could. And so we would make our blocks on those types of dogs. And then we would assign them to glucosamine and control, glucosamine and control. That's what we mean by a randomized block design. Okay, so in the completely randomized design, we didn't care. We just put all the subjects together, sorted them into control and treatment. In randomized block design, we put them into the blocks and then put them in treatment and control. The third one I wanted to describe for you is something, it's a very special kind of randomized block design. It's called matched pairs design. In matched pairs design, each individual is their own block. So, you know, I have all my test subjects that show up. Okay, here are my subjects. Oh, the red ink's not going to work on that, is it? Okay, and then what I do is I say, well, actually, what I need each subject to be they're going to be their own block. So I have subject 1, subject 2, subject 3, subject 4, subject 5, and so on. Okay, and so each one of those is their own block, basically. And so, yeah, these guys get sorted here, 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 and here. And then there's some way for me to do random assignment. So let me describe for you what happened a couple years ago on the AP exam. They wanted you to design a study to test the effectiveness of a new waterproofing design on hiking boots. And so they said, design a study where we could see the difference between the new waterproofing method and the old waterproofing method that would account for as many lurking variables as possible. And so what I said was, okay, so if you try to do one of these other designs, okay, let's just say completely randomized design. Say, well, okay, we're going to take our 100 subjects and we're going to, and we've got 50 of the new waterproof boots and 50 of the old waterproof boots, and I'm going to randomly assign them to give either, you know, control would be the old method and treatment would be the new method. Okay, and here's the thing, they assigned, let's say Diana was in the study, and Diana got assigned to one group and Mr. Ray got assigned to the other group. Okay, and maybe Diana got the new waterproofing method and Mr. Ray got the old waterproofing method. But what you might not know about Diana is she is always outside. She goes hiking every weekend. She just lives in the mountains, in the woods as much as she possibly can. So doesn't matter, rain, snow, sunshine, whatever, Diana is out hiking and she loves it. She wants to be outside as much as possible. And Mr. Ray, on the other hand, you know, basically lives at school, gets in his car, drives home, takes off his shoes, and then sits on the sofa for the rest of the evening. Okay, and I don't really ever go outside because I'm always inside. All right, and I don't like to go outside on the weekends, so I just stay in my house and play Xbox or whatever. That's not really true, but if that were the case, do you think that there is a lurking variable in there that's going to play a significant role in how good our boots look at the end? It won't matter which kind of waterproofing method Diana got. Those boots have been outside nonstop for the next 6 months, okay? And it won't matter what kind of waterproofing I got. My boots are going to be pristine by the end of this thing because I'm never going to get them wet. Okay. Well, obviously, that is a big problem where we are going to be confounded by whether it was the waterproofing method or the lurking variable of outside activity. Some students thought, well, let's do this. We'll randomly assign after we figure out if they are active outside or not. Okay, so instead of large breed, they said active outside, and small breed was not active. Okay, that one got partial credit. It was better. What they were really going for was matched pairs design. Because what they said was, okay, let's say we have test subject number 1. Let's say that's Diana, and test subject number 2, that's Mr. Ray. And they said, we're going to make you your own block. Diana's going to get one boot, is going to be new waterproofing. Maybe her left foot gets new waterproofing at random, and her right foot gets old waterproofing. So what they've done is they've found a way to randomize left boot versus right boot, and that's called a matched pair, because now we're going to compare Diana's feet to herself. And then it doesn't matter that Mr. Ray is a couch potato, because guess what? His left boot and right boot are going to get compared to themselves anyway. So here's my left boot, here's my right boot. And it doesn't matter, or right and left, which one gets which is completely randomized. Doesn't matter new or old waterproofing method, it doesn't matter, okay? Because it'll be my left foot compared to my right foot. So in the case of matched pairs design, you look at the specific kind of waterproofing method that was used, or in general, each individual in the study has both a control and an experiment, or a treatment 1 and treatment 2. And then we compare each individual. And that's called a matched pairs design. And that's a really strong design for a study. All right, guys, that's a lot on the language of experiments. There's a couple of other language terms in here. Some that you've probably heard before, like double blind and single blind and placebo. And we'll hit more of those in class on well, whether I see you Thursday or Friday, it depends. But we will talk a little bit more about some of the other design elements that go in. And we're going to talk about things that can go poorly. So, because I want to keep this video a little bit shorter if at all possible. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for this video. We'll have more on a couple of things in class, like how to experiment poorly. And we're going to check out some info from Dr. Fauci, and you'll see where he's using some of the same language in his congressional testimony, which I thought was pretty cool. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in class.